I was an ardent, gung-ho Mormon defender, and I was writing letters to different ministers, different people, Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Alaska, Montana, Colorado. I was carrying on a letter writing correspondence defending Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon. And I thought, Mormonism's invincible. So I was an apologist before I ever got online. Well, the third year, this guy comes in and he goes, damn it, Shirts. I had a dream last night. You sit down and you pay attention to what I'm going to tell you. I said, all right, here we go. And he goes, I'm serious. I said, okay, absolutely. I'll take you seriously. And he said, Jesus came to me in a dream last night, and he told me to tell you to get your butt on the internet. Jesus wants you on the internet.
Welcome back to the Gnostic Informant, and you are about to attain true gnosis. Today I'm joined by Kerry Shirts, the backyard professor, who has his own channel, and there's a link in the description. And we're going to get his background story today. It's a pretty interesting story, talking about some Mormonism, talking about Christianity, stuff like that. And let's get right into it. How's it going?
It's going good. How you doing, Neil?
Great.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's just, besides the snow outside, but we're good though. So yeah, tell us about how you became a Mormon. I don't know if you grew up in it or you're born into it or how you got involved. And let's go from that story towards your exit story, and we'll go from there.
All right, good. I was actually born and raised in Mormonism. And I had a good childhood. I had good parents. I really did. There's some people, unfortunately, within the church that don't have a good family experience. I did. I'm number 4 of 5 boys. My mama, she was bad. You don't sass mama. Oh, we got along good though. I mean, I had a great childhood. I had a good upbringing. Dad made sure we never went hungry or didn't. We always had clothes, and I had great childhood friends. I really had mine was more or less a typical kid being raised in the Mormon faith. I went to church all the time, went through the primary and Sunday school, and in my, I was in Scouts. I went through Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, we did all the camping routine and go out into the mountains and learn how to build fires and identify poison ivy. And hopefully you didn't, use it for toilet paper. That we actually did have a kid who did that. And, oh my gosh, talk about hilarious. Not for him, but for the rest of us. But so, yeah, I had a good upbringing. I didn't have any, I became a typical teenager. When they have 2 different priesthoods. They call it the Aaronic priesthood and the Melchizedek priesthood, and the Aaronic priesthood is for the youth. And I went through all of that, the deacon, teacher, priest routine. And through our teenage years, they say the theme, the idea is to get you ready to go on your mission. And they want every young man. Now, I was in the let's see, I graduated 79, so I was in the 1970s through my teenage years. And in 1978 is when the prophet, the leader of the church, they call a prophet, and then they have a council of 12 apostles, because the theme in Mormonism, if you do or do not know, is Joseph Smith back in the 1830s restored Jesus's true church because after Jesus found his church, his apostles were killed off and the authority was lost, and they ended up with just having uh, bishops instead of apostles. So anyway, the church disappeared, for Revelation stopped, and for 17, 1800 years, there was no revelation until Joseph Smith showed up and he had his visions. The angel Moroni came to him and delivered the Book of Mormon. And of course, as a teenager, I took when you get into high school, they have you take 4 years of seminary, which is like an extra hour-long Sunday school, except you're at school instead of in church, right?
Yeah.
And so I did all that. I went through all 4 years of seminary, and I graduated honorably from seminary. During seminary, each one of those 4 years, Mormons do accept the Bible, and so for the 1 year, we all read the Old Testament, and for the next year, we all read the New Testament, and then the year after that, we read the Book of Mormon, and then the year after that, we read Joseph Smith's Revelations, which is called the Doctrine and Covenants, right? So
Wow.
I got through all of that noise, and they say, well, that prepares you for a mission. Every young man go on a mission between 19 and 21, which I did. I went to Missouri, St. Louis, and the summers there are hot, humid.
Now, what does a mission mean?
A mission is when you go out for 2 years and you do nothing but preach Mormonism.
To anyone, just everyone on the street?
What's that?
Just to anybody you see, everyone on the street that you see?
Yeah, they kind of set like a schedule for you. You have a companion, so there's two of you, 2 by 2, and they set a schedule for you. If usually afternoons or evenings is spent going door to door, knocking on doors, kind of like the Jehovah's Witnesses do. Sometimes we did telephone calls. Other times, if I lived in a it wasn't a college town. I guess there was a community college, and we would go up on campus quite a bit and talk with the kids on college and all that on campus. But so for 2 years, you're supporting yourself, or else your parents are supporting you. I was fortunate that I had enough jobs. I saved up enough money that I could pay for my first year, and my dad helped me with the second year, right? So, but yeah, I did a 2-year mission, and then you come home and they instantly prompt you to try to get married now, because they probably realize you're past your teenage years, you're getting horny as hell, you've been 2 years out there teaching the gospel, and now it's time to get married. And like an idiot. I probably shouldn't say that, but within 1 year, I got married. I really did. I took it. I basically, looking back on it, hindsight, they say, is 2020. I really grew up naive. I was in a bubble. I was in the Mormon bubble, and I just basically believed, well, if you do what everyone says to do, then things will work out right. It's all good. And so I did. And so I came home, and everybody was encouraging me to get married. So I did within a year. And that lasted 4.5 years. I have 2 wonderful kids, though. I'm very fortunate that way. But we were both too young, too immature, didn't have a clue what we were doing. We really, and she was a mama's girl. And our divorce was brutal. It was ugly. It was massive.
She devout Mormon as well?
Yeah, she was better. She was better than I was, and I thought I was righteous enough to be translated like Enoch. Oh, I was such a self-righteous prig back then. I'm amazed I had any friends at all. I probably didn't. They were probably just faking it.
Let's explore that a little bit. What was your worldview as a American Mormon in the 20th century? What were you Republican? I'm guessing out here. Tell us about that a little bit.
Well, yeah, my dad, it's real interesting because Grandpa lived with us for the last 4 years of his life. He died my junior year in high school. My grandma died 5 years previous to that. And my dad didn't want grandpa to live by himself, so he brought him over to our house, which was wonderful, man. My grandpa was awesome, man. And so he lived with us the last 4 years of his life. Well, he was a devout Democrat. He came up through the Depression, and FDR saved America's bacon, according to him, with all those work projects.
Right.
And put America back to work after the Depression.
Oh, yeah, the New Deal. Yep.
Yeah, the New Deal. And so grandpa was a Democrat. Well, my dad, for whatever reason, ended up being a Republican. And it's not like we did a lot of politics. And dad was so involved with the church himself. He was a truly devout Mormon, conservative, and a Republican. So I would say growing up, I probably had the Republican ideal. Just through living with my mom and dad, I had the Republican ideology in me. But I was so busy playing as a teenager. I got a skateboard for years. I ended up with a motorcycle for a couple of years. I was the only kid who didn't wreck on the motorcycle and break any bones. I was the only kid who did not wreck my father's car. True story. I know. Sounds like BS, but I'm telling you. He had a blue Plymouth Fury 3, and it was the most beautiful car. I loved it. It was great to go out on dates with. And so I never wrecked the car. I never robbed it or anything.
And so being so being around this part of the world where there's a lot of Mormons, a lot of conservative types.
Yeah.
What was it like turning on the TV and seeing like different worldviews in different movies or TV shows that sort of...
Good question. What was that like?
Yeah.
I remember, yeah, we watched TV. I'm trying to think of my teenage years just went by in a blur because now in order, see, they say the teaching is don't have sex before you're married.
Right.
I was true virgin before I got married.
A lot of Mormons follow that from what
I lived that. My way of staying out of trouble was to date widely. And I mean, I had girlfriends, yeah, and we'd go up on the hill and make out and all, but I never did any hanky. I know it's weird, but I really didn't. I never got in trouble because I was dating so many different girls, and we would go out in groups, and it was a lot of fun. We'd go roller skating with 8 of us, and we would go to the movies with couples, and I actually had a ball. I really did. I had a lot of fun.
Now, is that polygamy thing? Is that a real thing in Mormonism?
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
is that something you wanted to pursue maybe yourself, or did you just think that was kind of funny?
You know what? We never, this is the interesting thing. I really didn't learn about the in and outs of polygamy until after my mission.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, crazy, isn't it? I was 21 before I actually, and I can't remember my reaction to it. I suppose I was still so full of the missionary ardor. I tried to keep all the mission rules as best I could and all that. And I really never did anything stupidly ridiculous I mean, they have a particular geographical area that they want you to stay in for your own safety, 50 miles to the east and west, wow, 30 miles north, that's the area you proselyte in. And then every 4 to 6 months.
That's the key people in their places, basically. Is that what that is?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and I mean, unfortunately, there's people out there who love to pick on the missionaries or hurt them or whatever. And so they're trying to be conscientious, keep us safe. So
yeah, of course.
They told us that's what the rules are for. And so, being a naive Mormon raised boy, I took it all in. But I had a great mission too. But this idea of polygamy, I never taught it on my mission. I didn't, I'd never read a book of it. All of Dad's books on his bookshelf when I was a teenager was based. The general authorities, that's what they call the group of the leaders, the general authorities. There's a first presidency of three. You have the prophet and his two counselors. Then you have the quorum of the 12, right? Well, they are allowed to write books, and they'll write doctrinal books, or else they'll write biographies or bibliographies, faith promoting pap and pablum and stuff. And then they sell it through Deseret bookstores and all that. Well, Dad had a whole slew of them on the bookshelf. And in my teenage years, I read most of them. That was real interesting. So I actually ended up on my mission being decently well read, but Dad never studied polygamy, right? And so I hadn't heard about it. And it wasn't until later that I learned about it. So we really never even had any discussions of polygamy. Dad basically followed the, what would I call it? The church party line. If the church said, Monday nights are supposed to be family home evening.
Did you read scripture at this time period? Were you reading it, or you were just?
Yeah, I did.
Now, did you ever get the question of, hey, the Old Testament doesn't seem to line up with the Mormon books, or did you just think it all made sense?
Oh, back in my teenage years, it was all one gospel.
Right.
Yeah.
It never crossed your mind that you had a textbook that sort of conflicts with the other textbook? You never thought about that?
No, and you know why? I learned this later on after I was done being an apologist.
Yeah. No, that's interesting.
Or during my apologetic years, because the Sunday school manuals and the priesthood meeting, the men on Sunday morning for 1 hour would get together in what we called a priesthood meeting, and the women would go off into their women meeting as Relief Society, right? Yeah. And then the next hour, we would all get together and go to Sunday school for 45 minutes or so. And then we would have the final meeting where the whole congregation gets together, and that was called sacrament meeting.
Interesting.
So, but during that time, what the church was doing, they would write the manuals and then distribute it church-wide. And so we would read out of those manuals. And so my scripture reading consisted of reading those manuals and how they interpreted events in the Bible or in the Book of Mormon or in the world. And basically, for all intents and purposes, for real, the church Mormonized everything so that it all fit.
And the reason why I think that's so fascinating is because Christians sort of are like a level back from that, where they think they're like, okay, our New Testament fits perfectly with the Old. But the Jews will be like, no, it doesn't. And here's why. And they'll give the reasons why. And the reasons make sense. But it's like all the Mormons are doing is going a step further and saying our books fit perfectly with the New Testament and the Old Testament and this book. And there's just another step, a layer added on, basically. It's the same thing. And have you ever heard this quote? This is a famous quote by a Jewish scholar who said that God invented Mormonism so that Christians can know how Jews feel.
I have not. What a great quote.
Yeah.
That is very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then see, there's the, and I think it was just inevitable because of the basis of how Joseph Smith set stuff up. When he was a 15-year-old, he went into the Sacred Grove to pray about which church was right. In his day, in America, actually, and New York was the hotbed where he lived, and in Vermont, that whole northern eastern quadrant of America. Hang on, I got to plug my computer in real quick.
Sure, go ahead.
That whole northeastern quadrant of America was called the burned over district.
Yeah.
And these guys were on fire with itinerant wilderness preachers traveling from town to town, and they were having wars of words. So that confused poor Joseph Smith. 15-year-old, he jumps off into he's reading the Bible, comes across James 1:5, says, if anybody lacks wisdom, let him ask of God. And he goes, yeah, good idea. So he bops off over into the forest, and he has this first vision
Wow.
of God the Father and his son, Jesus Christ, is how he described this first vision.
Hmm.
And so he took the opportunity. He said, okay, what do I do? Which church should I join? And he was told, none of them are any good. Don't join any of them. Your sins are forgiven you. It's all cool. Don't join any of them. So that was the beginning. And then after that, 3 years later, Moroni shows up and gets him eventually, in 4 years or so, gets him the Book of Mormon gold plates. In the meantime, Joseph is out there treasure digging with a bunch of the neighbors, and he's using a seer stone that he found to look into the ground to find where the treasure is, right? So the idea is none of the other churches are true, so don't join any of them. Well, I mean, that sets you up automatically as the antagonist, right?
Yeah.
That makes you, in some respects, that makes you enemy number one. And then when the church was restored properly from Joseph Smith's point of view, then the authority resided in Mormonism. And so all of the other Christians are apostate. Well, that doesn't exactly make you friends, right? So on my mission, without saying so, I was saying so that when I knocked on the door and someone showed up at the door and I said, hi, we're with the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. We've got a special message to share with you, and yada, 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 hand them a pamphlet or whatever. We're telling them you're in the wrong church. You need to come join ours. Not that quickly, but that's essentially what
kind of responses do you get from people when you do that? What do you
mostly they would say, no, thanks, I'm happy.
And that was it, just nice, very politely say no. That's mostly most people.
For the most part, yeah. You know, Missouri is called the Show Me State, and church history, Mormon church history, a lot of it happened in Missouri, St. Louis. I went right back to church history country, man. Yeah. Right? And but for the most part, they were truly, I mean, they're great people. They were really, I had a great mission. What bothered me more than the people was the weather. Yeah. Because the winters there are really stinking cold and windy, and the summers there are really cotton picking hot and sticky. So I come from the Rocky Mountains, and so
what is exactly is the story of Joseph Smith? If you want to give a little rundown for people who had no idea, what exactly?
Well, I gave you the beginning. He was just basically a country boy. His mom and dad were farmers, and unfortunately, his dad wasn't really very good with business, with farming, you know, and they had to move quite a bit when he was a kid. And of course, every time you move from one farm, you have to clear the land of all the rock and tree stumps and all that. I mean, those kids, Joseph Smith got tough. He was a badass. He was the state champion stick puller. He pulled up the strongest man of Illinois with one hand with the stick. You sit on your butt, you put your feet together, and then between you, you reach out and you're each holding a stick, and on go, one of you pull. You each pull against each other, and the one that pulls and stands the other one up wins.
That's what it was, huh?
Joseph Smith was unbeatable.
Really?
He pulled up the strongest man with one arm.
Now, is this? Do you think this is a true story or?
No, it's a true story.
Oh, is it?
He was a hell of a stick puller because he worked his butt off as a kid because he can't. They had a farm, and it was in his later teenage years. They had a 75 acre farm that him and his brothers had to clear of stone, trees, tree stumps, and stuff like that. That takes a boatload of work for kids. They didn't have tractors back then, so he was tough. But yeah, he had his vision with Moroni. Every year, Moroni would meet him at the Hill Cumorah. That's in New York, northern New York, up by Albany.
Wow, it's over by me. I'm in Buffalo.
Oh yeah. That's close to you.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Just the story
Yeah,
in New York. I always
and
forget about that. But yeah, so
so
Moroni, some angel
he
Moroni.
met Moroni every year for 4 years on the Hill Cumorah because, as the story was told to Joseph Smith, and as he tells it, the gold plates was the record of the ancient civilization that came here to America, and they eventually ended up being destroyed. But before they did, they had written their account on these gold plates and hid them in that Hill Cumorah. So every year for 4 years, Moroni met Joseph Smith at the Hill Cumorah, showed him where the plates were, and told him more about the civilization. This is how Joseph Smith told it. After the 4th year, he got the plates. He wasn't allowed to show anybody the plates except certain special scribes. And so through the course of several months, he had scribes working with him while he used his seer stone and an instrument that he called the Urim and Thummim to help him translate these plates, because
that's from the Old Testament, which is fascinating because
it is, yeah, the Urim and Thummim. I've got a great scholar study, Van Dam, on the biblical Urim and Thummim. He did a PhD dissertation and it's like 500 pages, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's like a rock. It's like 2 different rocks that you have. One of them is white and black. The other one, they're both white and black. One of them is black with white writing. The other one's white with black writing. And Urim and Thummim basically mean yes and no. You would ask Jehovah whatever question you want to ask, and you'd throw the lots, the 2 Urim and Thummim, and it would tell you what the answer would be. And the Levite priest would know how to read the 2 stones. So the fact that
you're one of the first Christians I've run across, or former Christians, sorry, that actually know enough about the Urim and Thummim that you recognize that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's crazy. Awesome. It comes straight from the Torah. It's from the Old Testament.
It is. It's from the Torah.
No one knows when they stopped doing that, because there's not a text that says, oh, the priest said not to do that anymore. It doesn't say that.
Yeah, so they just kind of fade out. Yeah, they do.
Right?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So the Mormons are using this concept, which is a valid concept in Judeo-Christianity. They're using that and saying, look, we did this. So it's funny to me that they're, out of all the people that are following one of the ancient rites, it's the Mormons.
Right?
Isn't that great?
Yeah. And he was using that as I don't think in the Old Testament that they actually used that instrument to actually translate anything of any kind of record. No. I think it was more of an inquiry to the high priest. The high priest would inquire of the Lord, and then the Urim and Thummim would either say yes or no. It was kind of like dice or lots.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That's all it was, yeah.
So Joseph Smith kind of added that dimension of, well, I can use this to actually translate an unknown language.
Yeah.
But coupled with that, he didn't use the Urim and Thummim all the way through with the Book of Mormon, because he did have that, and it's an egg-shaped, probably not quite as big as your fist. It'll fit in your hand. It's an egg-shaped stone that he called the seer stone. They just recently wrote a book on that and published it 4 or 5 years ago. They still have Joseph Smith's seer stone in the historian's vault in Salt Lake. And so they never did lose track of it. So Joseph claimed he used that to translate this reformed Egyptian, this unknown language, off these gold plates, right? Well, he got the Book of Mormon out to the public, and the angel took the gold plates back. Dang it, man. But that's what happened. So now we have this Book of Mormon. Well,
And what happens in the plates exactly?
the angel Moroni took them back once Joseph Smith was done with them.
And why is that?
That's a great question. I wish I knew. Here's what has been said. Now, see, here's where this tension between, the tension between Mormons and Christians, Mormons and Jews, Mormons and every other religion, but now also between Mormons and Mormons is there are some who say that seems suspicious. Why not leave those gold plates for people to examine?
Right.
But Joseph Smith said, no, the angel wanted them back, and I didn't have the power to stop him, so he took them back.
It's very convenient for a story that
seems to me, doesn't it? Yeah.
The point is to get people to believe, but it's not just Mormons that do this. It's Christianity does this, where it's like, don't test the Lord and ask for a miracle. You're testing the Lord. It's like,
oh, isn't that interesting? That kind of psychology is real interesting in organized religion, isn't it? Yeah, that's interesting to know.
Yeah, and it's like the entire point is that so that if you believe, somehow that faith is virtuous and somehow that is what saves you. But it's like, okay, so that's all you want, right? Let's get this straight. All you want is for us to believe. Okay, well, how is it that hard to do then? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you would think that if that's the whole goal is just to get people to believe, nothing else. Who cares about how much you donate to charity? Who cares about how many people you help and save? That means nothing. All you have to do is believe in this one thing. Well, then you would think that mission should be accomplished very easily, but it's not. People have their doubts because no one sees miracles throughout their lifetime. Nobody has these. There are
at least not as elaborated in the Bible.
Right.
Yeah. But when I explored some of the atheist materials after they say I fell away. My view, I should say, is I did not have a faith crisis. Mormonism has a truth crisis. They want to blame me, and I'm telling them, hey, I can't defend the indefensible anymore. So that's how this works. You guys have to show better evidence than what you've done. And they say, no, you have to have faith. But when faith is invoked, it is always because the evidence isn't strong enough. That's almost like an admission that, well, my evidence isn't strong enough to convince you, so we have to make up for it by invoking faith.
Right.
Well, Richard Carrier, huge with Bayes' theorem. And Bayes' theorem basically in a nutshell states, faith can't change the probability, though. Only evidence changes the probability. So Bayes would say you are justified in both directions. You're justified in either belief or disbelief, or however, based on what we know right now with the evidence we have, knowing we're fallible. But if something else comes along and it shows you, well, you used to believe this, but this piece of evidence shows you now that you really can believe that, then you're justified in changing your mind and beginning to believe in that. and vice versa. If
Right.
the evidence comes along and shows you, for instance, the name of Alma in the Book of Mormon. It's an ancient prophet, and there's actually a book of Alma in the Book of Mormon, smack dab in the middle of it. And it talks about a father named Alma and his son named Alma, Alma the younger, and it talks about their adventures and all. Well, the idea of Alma being an authentic ancient Hebrew name at one point seemed to have really good archaeological evidence in the Bar Kokhba documents, the archaeological discovery made by Yigal Yadin over there in Israel, in Bar Kokhba, in the cave of Bar Kokhba. He translated that, and the name came out Alma as a male. So, of course, me being a Mormon apologist at the time, I jumped on that. And by that time, I was online. So I was arguing on the message boards. Hey, here is an archaeological piece of evidence that demonstrates Alma could be a genuine ancient male in the old world. So that's a point in favor of the Book of Mormon. Well, 10 years ago, 30 years after Yadin, and Yadin's dead now, but he was a very, very good Israeli archaeologist, and he was good friends with the Mormons. BYU would have him come over and lecture down there in Provo, Utah, and he would invite some of the biblical scholars over there. He actually helped the Mormons establish the Jerusalem Center for the BYU kids to go over, as long as they didn't proselyte to the Jews. They allowed them to at least go over in the Holy Land for a semester to study, you know, things like that. They scratched each other's back. 10 years ago, a new study came out on those Bar Kokhba documents, and the scholar now, who is also from Israel, retranslated all of the Bar Kokhba documents, and he shows conclusively, and he really does, he's not being antagonistic to the Mormons or to the Christians or to the Jews or anything. He's just saying Yadin was very hasty in bringing out that information about these Bar Kokhba documents because it was just shortly after Israel had gained their independence. He was trying to give them a glorious foothold as an old nation getting back home after thousands of years. So he hurried and got this information out to give the Jews a pride of who they were, and they're back home. And now here is one of their great hero ancestors, and we have found the actual records, the actual journal, as it were, of Bar Kokhba himself. Well, that's big stuff, right?
Yeah.
In his haste to get all that stuff translated, he didn't do so hot. So it's been redone. It's been retranslated. And now they have shown that the name Alma is a complete wrong translation.
Really? Because the word Alma, doesn't that mean young woman in Hebrew?
Yes, it does. And see, that was part of the critique,
right.
And that was part of the reason why, as apologists, Yigal Yadin's translation thrilled the hell out of us.
So now you got that's a bad critique. You got a guy named Alma. It's like, imagine in English being called, "Hey, young woman."
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, young woman? Like all the time. That's your name. That to me is like, that is detrimental in the world of Mormonism. But when they found those,
no, they're very proud of that name Alma because of the prophet Alma in the Book of Mormon.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So when you had those tablets found, or whatever you said, the Bar Kokhba tablet,
right, the documents,
that had to have been a huge relief for the people of Mormonism to say, "Look, we have this. Oh, don't make fun of him anymore. He's not a young woman. It's a real man. This is a real name."
They had world press conferences, man. We gave firesides. that adult gatherings in the evening on Sunday to share the good news.
Over a name.
A vindication of the Book of Mormon. It was a huge deal. Yeah.
But what you were saying right before that, you were talking about how your faith is really dependent on evidence. It's dependent on worldview. Plus, though, there's also the psychology of telling somebody that if you don't believe, you'll end up in hell. So it makes me wonder, and a lot of other people will wonder, is faith really just sort of another word for hoping? Because think about it. You believe in stuff, right? Like I believe this is gonna fall if I let go of it, based on my life experience, based on science. But when you say something as in like what's gonna happen when you die, and you better believe X, Y, and Z, the factors that are in play are due to either reward or punishment. Those are the factors that are actually playing into your deciding and you're choosing. You're not really believing in something. You're really choosing to give allegiance to a certain worldview. That's really what it is.
In order to avoid a punishment or get a reward.
Right. So really you're just forcing yourself to believe in something based on if I don't, this could be bad. You're not really weighing the evidence. You're not really looking at is this possible? Is this even real? Is this story match up with the historical record? You're not really thinking about those things. You're thinking of, oh no, if I don't believe this, something bad's going to happen. So you're really just, what you're doing is you're giving allegiance to an idea. Someone tells you believe in this idea, and all you got to do is get on your knees and pray and say that you believe this X, Y, and Z. Oh, really? That's all I have to do? Okay, I did that. Oh, I do believe. Oh, it does work. Oh, look at me. I'm saved. It's like, what does that even mean, saved? That's such a vague concept. It really is.
Well, and you're giving me a legitimate point of view from a Christian view that Mormonism would see, not in a negative, not in a judgmental way, but Mormonism would see that as an incomplete understanding. Right. And that is why there had to be a restoration of a fuller truth, which Mormonism claims to be. Because Mormonism doesn't quite approach it that way. Mormonism says, I mean, it believes in the concept of faith and belief and all that, of course, but it says we need to align ourselves deliberately through our living righteously. Right. And today, the psychology, oh my gosh, they say at every general conference, every 6 months, the church leaders will put on what they call a church-wide general conference. You might have seen some on TV. They make a big whoop-de-doo about it. And they try to broadcast it worldwide to anybody who will watch it, right? Well, they say that we need to walk in the covenant path. So there is a works righteousness orientation more than there is a just believe and you're saved, at least from the Mormon point of view. So they're very and the way, of course, and see, this is how this ties in somewhat, because the way that you get the congregation to do what the church thinks you need to do in order to get to heaven is through the carrot on the stick, fear and guilt. And that's what people have to deal with when they come to the recognition, I can't believe in those gold plates anymore. Or in my instance, my issue came to a head with the papyri, the Joseph Smith papyri in the Book of Abraham. That's where, and I was an expert as an apologist. To share my story just a little further, so you have a little bit more background, so that you understand what the heck I'm talking about. I I remarried, and my wife was a graphic artist, and eventually she quit her job out at the office and brought it home and worked in the house. And I was an artist in wood. I was carving and cutting and scroll sawing wood art, people's portraits, animals, eagles, things like that, and selling them in tourist spots. And I did okay. I actually got very, very good according to all the other scroll saw artists. And I produced a book with Patrick Spielman, who was then the world's foremost well-known scroll saw artist. And he helped me write a book with him. And one of my wife's customers one day sitting there, because the customers would come in, carry on their, yeah, I need 500 business cards. Can you set this up and stuff like that? That's what the graphic artist does. He told me, he goes, Kerry, you need to get on the internet. It'll change your life. I go, what's the internet? Never even heard of the internet.
What year is this?
Oh, let's see. It was
90s.
No, it was in the 80s.
Oh wow, this is really the beginning of the internet.
This is when it was phone dial-up connecting.
Yeah, well, the 90s was still like that. The 90s. So I would say,
but it had to be in the 80s because I had my first. No. Wait a minute. My first fair conference was 1999, so it was in the early 90s.
Yeah, because the internet was still dial-up in the 90s.
Very early 90s.
I think if you were using the internet in the late 80s, you were a tech millionaire. You were
just a punk kid.
It didn't become a household thing until the mid 90s, late 90s.
Okay, then that's when it was. Yeah.
Well, go ahead. Yeah, I'm just trying to get the settings straight.
No, that's all good.
Yeah.
So
what's the internet?
Okay, yeah, sure, yeah, I'll look into it. You bet. A year goes by, and of course he comes and goes with more business stuff, and we have customers coming and going all the time at home, and I'm back in the back shop making my living doing scroll saw art and taking it up to West Yellowstone, the tourist items, and over there in Jackson Hole, some of the national park areas, and I took some down into California and so on and so forth. And a year later he goes, Kerry, you need to get on the internet. It will change your life. I'm not kidding. Dude, you belong on the internet. Now, at this time, before I ever knew what was online, what online meant, I was an ardent, gung-ho Mormon defender, and I was writing letters to different ministers, different people in Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Alaska, Montana, Colorado. I was carrying on a letter writing correspondence defending Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon. I had gone to Rick's College for 2 years in Rexburg, and I just did my general studies. And while I was there, I found Hugh Dibley, who was the Mormons' greatest scholar of the scriptures. He knew 23 languages. He did research in all of them, and he defended the Book of Mormon and Joseph Smith and Mormonism and all of the quirky, weird doctrines, baptism for the dead, and the Book of Abraham and the papyri and the Egyptian facsimiles, on and on and on. Well, I photocopied all of his product, of his research, and I mean thousands of pages of stuff. Dozens of books. I got it all. I collected it all, and I read it all. And I thought, Mormonism's invincible. So I was an apologist before I ever got online. Well, the third year, this guy comes in and he goes, damn it, Shirts. I had a dream last night. You sit down and you pay attention to what I'm going to tell you. I said, all right, here we go. And he goes, I'm serious. I said, okay. Absolutely. I'll take you seriously. And he said, Jesus came to me in a dream last night, and he told me to tell you to get your butt on the internet. Jesus wants you on the internet because I was sharing my responses. Paul was also a Mormon, right? And so I was sharing my correspondence and stuff with Paul, and it was blowing him away about how vastly intelligent I was. Well, I wasn't intelligent. I was just using Nibley's arguments, right? So my response back then was, how come Jesus is coming to you in a dream and not me? Well, I mean, if he wants me on the internet,
Why is
shouldn't
he telling you?
wouldn't you think he should come and tell me? I mean, why is he telling you?
That's the big question about all this stuff.
That's not right. Well, he talked me into getting on the internet. Now, two things. He was absolutely right. It changed my life, all right, but not the way any of us expected.
And I'm old enough. I'm 32. I'm old enough to remember the early days of the internet when it was chat rooms and it was like
the
messenger boards and messenger boards, basically. Like there was a lot of that stuff going on.
There was a lot of that, wasn't it? Yeah.
A lot of debating, a lot of.
And you remember the old AOL?
Yes, AOL
online and how they got in trouble and all that noise. Oh, the good old days, right?
Yeah, it was a weird time because everyone's nobody. This is before MySpace. This is before
yeah, it was
even before
it was before the idea of blogs.
Yeah, this is going back to like when there was a lot of clashing of ideas happening, and that was kind of how the world. This was new to the world, first of all, because for the first time you're seeing people able to communicate and debate ideas with no holds bar from different parts.
And it was exciting.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Here was my thinking. Once it dawned on me what a message board was, when Paul told me, he said, now you put out that evidence on Alma that you've told me about, because that blew him away. We have an authentic Hebrew archaeological discovery that the Book of Mormon name Alma is true. That's big stuff, right?
Yeah.
Paul said, put that out there. So he sat down with me, right? And so I get on this message board. All it looked to me like was a screen, right? You remember that? And so I type up the information. I said, okay, now what do I do? He goes, okay, see that button right there? I said, yeah. He said, touch it, hit it. And I hit it, and my message disappears. And I'm going, oh, no, did I? And he goes, no. He goes, give it 10 seconds. He goes, now click over here on this button. And I clicked on that button, and a whole list of stuff showed up. And he goes, see all those people? And I go, those are people. He goes, there's millions of people out there in the world on the internet. We are in a specific subject of Mormonism, right, on this message board. But go down to the Book of Mormon, because he took me to the subject that he wanted me to post in, right? So I went down to the Book of Mormon. He said, click on that. He said, now go to archaeology. And I clicked on that. And lo and behold, there was my name. And it already had a response.
Yeah.
I had posted it 1 minute ago. And he goes, on this message board, look over at this little button over here, this little box. It says there's 1,312 people reading this right now. So you are sharing that with 1,003. Now listen, I used to write letters, right? Knowing that I could type at once and thousands of people were seeing this absolutely turned me on.
Yeah.
That's when I got hooked and I began to type, baby. So that's how I kind of became an apologist, more or less. Well, I noticed through time, through a couple of years of experience, that I kept having, because more and more people were jumping on, right? And so, yes, I have discussed this subject and this subject and this subject about Joseph Smith with these guys, but the same questions kept coming up, right? Because new people were coming on, And the people, I had gotten enough of a reputation that the people on that particular message board was saying, hey, you need to ask this guy that question. He knows a lot. So I kept getting the same question. Well, when I answered, I got an email one time from a guy and he said, hey, I've been reading your responses. And he said, dude, you are heads and tails above all of the rest of us Mormons on here. You are so much better at responding, but we're all getting tired of answering the same question. I said, right? I am getting sick to death of talking about when Moroni showed up to Joseph Smith and what he said. I've said it 200 times, but it's a new influx of people, so I didn't want to be rude, right? Well, him and another gal and myself decided, let's share our emails address, work behind the scenes, let's work up an answer, and let's put together our own page where we can refer others to.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the beginning of what is called FAIR, the Foundation of Apologetic Information and Research.
Wow.
And it is now the largest Mormon apologetic site on the internet. I was one of the original 3 founders.
So let's, for the last couple minutes that we got, let's talk about how you ended up leaving real quick. If you want.
Okay.
I know this is a long, this could be
the last couple, we just started 5 minutes ago.
Pretty much.
We're going to have to do more than one of these.
No, that's what I'm saying. Let's just, because I do have something I got to get to in a little bit, but I want to touch on this a little bit, and then we can hone in on it the next time I have you back on.
Absolutely.
So how did you end up leaving?
What happened was our group grew leaps and bounds, the FAIR group, and as we begin to get more organized and all, we realized, hey, we have to protect ourselves legally here because this is pretty important what we're doing. So we actually officially started FAIR as a corporate or a in court, whatever. I can't remember how we did it, but Julianne Reynolds was the brains behind that, as Daryl was. Me, I just love to type and argue and refute people.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That's what I was doing. And I could type much faster than those two combined so that I could answer 500 questions a day. And I'm not kidding. And they could only answer 50. That's why they loved me. Yeah. So we started this private email list, and anyone who talked to us and said, man, I would love to get involved with what you guys are doing, because we categorize subjects: Book of Mormon, Joseph Smith, polygamy, and then I'd started studying polygamy. I went into the Book of Abraham and the papyri because I love the facsimiles, and we'll do some more posts. We'll do some more get-togethers where I spell out the details of my apologetics. I got real well known for that because that's what I put my time into. Well, I wanted to make FAIR independent of the church. And everybody agreed. They said, oh, of course. You know, I mean, we're supporting the church, but we don't want them to dictate to us, you know, we're having questions about the Book of Mormon. We need to respond to these and have them tell us, well, we need you to respond more about Joseph Smith. No, we're independent. We're going to do our thing. That worked well for about a year. Then come to find out, I ended up being on the board of directors. Come to find out there were some troubles with the finances, and I did not want to be legally liable. It wasn't me. I'll just leave it at that. So I stepped off the board. And another guy, Daryl and I and Julianne, stepped off the board, and we recreated the board through voting. And I said, what I want to do is research and write. And they said, oh, absolutely. We love your stuff. You just go to town. Well, the new president, Scott Gordon, now we had a secret email list group of us behind all of this where we could all communicate together and work out strategies for answering certain types of questions. Ignore this poster. He's a troll. Let's focus on that poster, etc. Why don't Kerry, you start studying this book. James, you study this book. Susan, you. And so we would get a group of us together, and then we would group write our answers so that we were irrefutable.
Wow.
Well, Scott, within a year, brought in one of the general authorities of the church to the email list. And I said, whoa, wait. This isn't how I founded FAIR. And he goes, well, you're not on the board anymore, so you don't have a say-so. I said, that's bullshit. You're going to ruin FAIR. You will now have to follow their dictates. He said, we are here to support the brethren. Every answer we give is going to have their approval, or we aren't going to post it.
Wow.
And I said, I'm out of here. I said, you're ruining this.
And you're still a believing Mormon at this time.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Well, I continued being an apologist for about 3 or 4 more years after that. I just developed my own webpage.
That's what I want to touch on when I have you back in a couple of weeks, maybe even less, maybe even quicker than that.
Sure.
I want to talk about that time period from you leaving the website to you in your own apologetics world, because I can identify with this so much, what you're talking about. Not as many years as you, because from the time I left the church to the time I ended up becoming completely out of it, there was this Gnosticism phase that I went through where I just kind of did my own thing and believed what I wanted to believe. That was a fun time, not gonna lie. That was a fun time.
I'll bet.
Yeah, I wrote some interesting stuff, and
you haven't given that up yet, have you?
No, and that's what started this whole channel. That's why I do this channel, Gnostic Informant.
Very good.
So, but yeah, so that we can definitely talk about that when I have you back, and that'll be a fun topic right there.
How long have we been recording, Neil?
This has been an hour.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
it feels like 10 minutes.
I know it does feel
illegal, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's been over an hour.
Let's do some more of these.
We
could have a lot of fun talking about all kinds. I want to hear your story too, and I'll bet you, from your angle, your angle and my angle will do this pretty strongly in some regards.
Yeah.
And yet will be separate in other regards. And I'll bet there's a lot of similarities, because what started me on my way out of being an apologist, it was trying to become the best apologist I could. So I began to read all of the biblical scholars instead of the Mormon leaders.
That's what happened to me.
And I was asking, wait a minute, man, how come we aren't writing these books? They're translating the Hebrew and the Greek. They're using archaeology. They're using sociological studies.
And that's what I want to touch on when I have you back, because when I left the King James only church and when I went to my own world and to my own thing, I started refuting them as if I was better than them, as if I was a better Christian than them. But in the process of refuting them, I ended up refuting Christianity as a whole.
Altogether.
That's what happens. Which is funny, because in the long run, you are better off in a church in a bubble than you are in your own. If you jump into your own world of Christianity, you're just a ship ready to sink at any moment. Yeah. Because those bubbles are what keep you in there. It's the fellowship that keeps people in there for a lifetime. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Psychology behind it,
Yeah, that's what they try to do in Mormonism. And they'll do every kind of intimidation, guilting that they can on you to shut you up and quit arguing and just accept their point of view. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, so let everyone know where they can find you on websites and books, whatever you got going on.
Oh, all right. I do podcasts and I do videos. My videos are at Mormon Discussion Inc. INC. And when you get on that webpage, go to the playlist button. It's kind of actually in the upper middle part. You can't miss it. Click playlist and click Backyard Professor, because he has like 5 or 6 different groups. I mean, sure, explore it and look around, but click on Backyard Professor and you'll get my list of videos. And I cover a lot of different topics involving Mormonism, psychology, prophecy, scripture, and all that. I am also, and I'd like to make this, when are you going to get this up, Derek or Neil?
Probably within a week.
Within a week. Okay. So I also do a Backyard Professor live on the Mormon Discussions Inc. site every Sunday night, 6 o'clock Mountain Time. So that'll be 8 o'clock your time on the East Coast, 5 o'clock on the West Coast. I start at 6 in the Mountain Time in the United States. So come and join me there. I have a lot of fun. I've just been mostly just chatting with the group, with the guys and gals as they show up, but I am beginning to share more of why my own apologetic defense didn't work, and it doesn't convince me now. So it's the old Backyard Professor refuting the younger Backyard Professor. I'm refuting my own apologetic. And so I'm doing that with this live. And then I have a podcast, backyardprofessor.org. And if you would be so kind, if you feel like it, you can hit the donate button. It does help. Every little bit helps. And that would be very nice. And I am continually producing more and more materials. I am not as prolific as our beloved Neil here, but I will get there. Yeah. I don't have to do this for a living yet, but I'm going to retire in about 5 years. And I can't think of anything more fun than sharing knowledge and information with people. And I suspect Neil and I will be doing a lot of, once I get my site set up and all, I'm going to be interviewing Neil too. And
absolutely,
we're going to have a good time sharing different possible views of scripture, society, cosmology, reality, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Because that's what people want to know. So we're talking about it. Yeah, in a dialogue. So
yeah, and that's it. And you have just attained true gnosis.
You have just attained true gnosis. The demiurge has no power over you.